Hello all, welcome to Narayana IAS Academy. This is Sureka Bhaskar presenting to you the daily news analysis. So for today's discussion, we've picked up a number of articles from The Hindu and the Indian Express which are both relevant and important for the UPSC CSE examination. Now let us have a look at the topics one by one. The first article for the day has been taken from page number 12 of the Indian Express, that is, fourth global mass coral bleaching event triggered, and what does this mean? So this particular article, we will be discussing about the ongoing or the current event of the fourth global mass coral bleaching, where we'll also be discussing about what are coral reefs, the types as well as the significance. Moving on, we'll discuss about what is this mechanism of coral bleaching, mass coral bleaching, and what are the significant events or similar events in the past, and also deal with various concerns or the threats that are associated with the coral reefs globally. The second article for the day has been picked up from page number 12 of the Indian Express, Health Insurance for Seniors. So this particular article discusses about the current election manifesto of the current ruling party, that is the Ayushman Bharat Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana, in order to include the senior citizens in order to give them accessibility to quality as well as good health care. Here we'll also be discussing about the current status of senior care in India as well as various concerns and challenges associated with this particular vulnerable section of the society. The next article for the day has been taken from page number 6 of The Hindu, Preparing India for Water Stress, Climate Resilience. So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about the need or India's need for a comprehensive water management strategy in order to tackle with the climate change as well as to ensure water security, thereby emphasizing or focusing on policy integration as well as financial investment in the process of adaptation. The fourth article for the day has been taken from the science section of The Hindu, that is, the mpox virus uses genomic accordion to evolve and infect humans. So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about this particular mechanism of genomic accordion that the pox viruses actually use in order to adapt very quickly to the changing environmental conditions. The last article for the day has been taken from page number 12 of the Indian Express, that is the story of Indelible Ink, a lasting symbol of elections. So this particular article discusses about the usage or the application of indelible ink in India's electoral process. We'll discuss about its history, the significance and the associated provisions with this particular indelible ink. And towards the end of the session, we'll conclude the session by discussing few prelims as well as the mains practice questions. The first article for the day is fourth global mass coral bleaching event triggered, and what does it mean? As the title suggests, this particular article discusses about the ongoing or the current event of the fourth global mass coral bleaching, and here we'll also be discussing about what do you mean by coral reefs, what are the different kinds of coral reefs, where are they present as well as the significance. And moving on, we'll be discussing the concept of coral bleaching, the mechanism of mass coral bleaching as well as other threats that are actually associated with that of the corals across the world. So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about the concept of coral reefs as it forms a significant portion of the climate change, and also we can map this particular topic to mains GS paper 3, environmental pollution and degradation. So moving forward, there has been a previous year question that is asked in the year 2019 in the mains examination on the impact of global warming on the coral life system with examples. Okay, so this particular topic becomes an important topic of discussion predominantly for your mains examination. Now let us actually look into what this particular article is discussing about. So according to NOAA, that is nothing but the National Oceanic as well as Atmospheric Administration, has actually observed that the world is experiencing a fourth mass coral bleaching event. Okay, so moving on to the observation of the NOAA, according to the organization, nearly 54 countries or the territories from the US, Saudi Arabia to Fiji have confirmed this process of mass coral bleaching, and also the Great Barrier Reef, which is actually located in Australia, which is the largest in the world, is also witnessing the instances of mass coral bleaching. Its most severe bleaching event is actually taking place now. and also reefs in the Western Indian Ocean, which actually includes the areas of Tanzania, Kenya, and off the western coast of Indonesia have also been affected. So now it is actually important to understand what are coral reefs and why is its depletion actually taking place. Okay, so the NOAA has also observed that the bleaching events have been linked directly to the elevated or the increased sea surface temperature, which are actually driven by the climate change events and which are exacerbated or exaggerated or aggravated effects from the phenomena such as El Nino also. So this particular ecosystem is called as the coral reef ecosystem. Now let us actually understand what are they. So coral reef is an underwater ecosystem which is actually characterized by reef building corals. Okay, so how does the formation of coral reefs actually take place is that coral polyps are tiny marine animals that actually live in colonies, and they actually secrete an exoskeleton which is made up of or essentially made of calcium carbonate, and that is actually called as the coral reefs. So these coral polyps, which are tiny marine animals that live in colonies, secrete hard exoskeleton which is made up of calcium carbonate, and over millions of years these exoskeletons actually build up in order to form the coral reefs. And what is the significance of coral reefs is that they are among the most diverse ecosystems on earth, supporting 25% of all known marine species. Thus, it is actually referred to as the rainforest of the seas. This is very, very important as it had actually appeared in one of your prelim examination. Okay. So moving forward, now let us actually understand what are the ideal conditions or the optimum conditions which are required for the formation of coral reefs. So if you look at this particular infographic, first is that it actually requires sufficient sunlight. That is, you need to have, a photic zone where corals actually grow in shallower water where sunlight can actually penetrate and reach them. The second one is it requires clear water. Okay, so corals need clear water that actually lets the sunlight through it without much of turbidity as well as pollution. The third one is warm water temperature is actually required. That is, the sea surface temperature is actually required, which can range between 20 to 32 degrees Celsius. Moving on, clean water. The corals not only require clear water, but it also needs clean water, and because these are actually sensitive to the process of pollution as well as sedimentation or the sediment deposition. And also, if you see the salinity, it can actually have an average salinity that is required between 27 to 40 parts per thousand. So moving forward, now let us actually look at the different types of corals. Okay, so here we'll be looking into different types of corals like the fringing reefs, the barrier reefs, as well as the atolls, and we'll be looking at the characteristic features and examples as to where they are actually located. So looking at this particular infographic, first let's talk about fringing reefs. These are, characterized by being present closest to the land, and they actually grow directly from the shoreline, and they actually generally have a narrow lagoon or they are directly attached to that of the shore, and this is the most common type of reef which is actually found on the earth. And here examples are, these are actually found along the Red Sea coast, the coastlines of East Africa, islands in the Caribbean, and also the reefs in Andaman and Nicobar Islands, Gulf of Mannar, Gulf of Kutch, as well as the Park Strait are all fringing reefs. Now moving forward, the second type is the barrier reefs. So here, these are parallel to the coast, if you actually can see here, and they are separated by deeper as well as wider lagoons, and they are larger and further offshore compared to that of the fringing reefs, and they often have number of channels as well as the gaps in between them, if you actually see over here, allowing the exchange of water. And here the examples include the Great Barrier Reef of Australia, and then we have the Belize Barrier Reef, Caribbean, and then the New Caledonia Barrier Reef. Okay. Now moving forward, let's actually look into the atoll reefs. What are these and how they are different from that of the fringing as well as the barrier reefs is that these are ring-shaped reefs that are surrounding a central lagoon. If you look at this one, there is a central lagoon, and these are the ring-shaped reefs that are surrounding a central lagoon, usually formed around the sunken islands, and typically these are actually found in deep oceanic waters. And the examples of the atolls actually include atolls of the Maldives, as well as the Bikini Atoll in the Marshall Islands. Then we have the Lakshadweep Atolls as well as the Caroline Islands in the Pacific. Now moving forward, let us actually understand what is this process of coral bleaching. Okay. So for example, if you look at this particular infographic, you can see a healthy coral. Okay. So corals actually, exist by means of striking a symbiotic relationship with that of an algae, which is called as the zooxanthellae. So the zooxanthellae algae actually provides the food through the process of photosynthesis that it actually undergoes, and in return it actually seeks shelter from that of the corals. Okay, so a healthy coral actually is like this, which is very, very colorful in appearance. So the algae called as zooxanthellae, they actually live in the tissue of the coral. Then what happens if it is actually subjected to a number of stress due to the increased sea surface temperature, or any change in the salinity, or any kind of change in the turbidity or the clear or the clean water? What happens is that the coral actually is subjected to stress, and this actually expels this algae of zooxanthellae from the tissues, and eventually this actually results in the bleaching of the coral. That is, not the death of the coral, but the bleaching of coral after the expulsion of the zooxanthellae. Okay, so eventually after bleaching through, when that continues or persists for a prolonged period of time, that results in the death of this particular coral. So bleaching actually means the coral turns white after the expulsion of the zooxanthellae. So this is actually the infographic. Now moving forward, let's look into what are the three major mass coral bleaching events that had actually taken place in the past. The first one was, it took place in the year 1998. Here, this actually coincided with a strong El Nino event, and which actually affected the corals around the world, with significant mortality which were reported specifically in areas of the Indian Ocean, the Southeast Asian reefs, as well as the Pacific. The next incident actually took place in the year 2010, which actually coincided with a moderate El Nino year, and this impacted the coral reefs across the Southeast Asia, parts of Western Pacific, the Indian Ocean, as well as the Caribbean. The next one actually took place from the period of 2014 to 2017. This was the longest and the most widespread global bleaching event on record, which actually lasted or persisted for 3 long years. And this event actually impacted the Great Barrier Reef severely, with extensive coral death. So moving forward, let us actually look at what are, apart from coral bleaching, what are the other threats that are actually associated with that of the coral reefs. So here, if you look at this particular infographic, we have classified that into two. That is the threats, one as the local threats, the next one as the global threats. Okay, so local threats actually include, first one is pollution. So first one is pollution. This actually leads to the sediment smoothing, then harmful algae growth, as well as reduced oxygen level in that of water. And that is actually followed by overfishing. This actually removes the crucial species, disrupting the balance in the ecosystem or the marine ecosystem. The next one is coastal development projects or the infrastructure projects along the coast of a region, as well as tourism. This destroys the habitats and increases the sediments as well as the pollution associated with the marine biodiversity. Moving on, the global threats include, first one is global warming. Here it is actually associated or characterized by increased temperature, which cause the coral bleaching, and also extreme weather events cause physical destruction of reefs like the El Nino, La Nina, etc. Moving forward, the sea level rise. This actually leads to increased sedimentation near the reefs, and here smoothing the corals as well as hindering the growth. And moving forward, the last, effect or the global threat actually includes the ocean acidification, which is nothing but the absorption of CO2 by the ocean. This actually lowers the pH level of the ocean. This hinders the ability of the coral to form the calcium carbonate exoskeleton, thereby actually results in the threat or the death of the coral reef ecosystem. The next article that we'll be discussing about is healthcare insurance for seniors. So this particular article is actually political in nature. However, our takeaway is to understand the trends or the growth in the elderly or the senior citizen population in our country. Okay, so in this particular article, we'll be discussing about the aging population in India, as they are a part of the vulnerable sections of the population along with children, women, etc. And also, this entire topic can be mapped to mains GS paper 2 under the welfare schemes for the vulnerable sections of the population. So moving forward, looking at a previous year question, there has been a mains question in the year 2020 with respect to that of the healthcare in India, that is particularly maternal healthcare. So here mental healthcare, maternal healthcare, geriatric healthcare, all these actually become very, very important for your mains examination in particular, and the schemes associated with them are important for your prelims examination. So now let us understand what this particular article is talking about. So according to the ruling party's manifesto, so just ignore this political thing, this is not required. So what the manifesto actually talks about is that the Ayushman Bharat Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana, that is the PMJAY scheme, will be expanded in order to cover the senior citizens and to provide them the access to free as well as quality healthcare. Now, moving ahead, let us actually have an overview of the aging population in India. Okay, so in India, if you see, senior citizens, that is people who are aged between 60 years and above, currently comprise a little over 10% of the population, translating to about 104 million. And according to the UNFPA, that is the United Nations Population Fund, this elderly population is actually projected to rise to around 319 million, that is around 19.5% of the total population by the year 2050. And moving forward, further, if you actually take into consideration the total dependency ratio, that is the amount or the number of people who will be depending on the working age population or the younger population, which actually stood at around 57% in 2020. This is projected to decrease steadily till 2025 due to the rise in the working age population, which is nothing but the demographic dividend, and post 2025, this is actually expected to rise again in order to touch 61.22 by 2050. So this is actually the current status of aging population in India. And here, if you look at an overview of aging population from this particular graph, here towards the x-axis, you can actually see the population by the broad age groups in percentage in India from 1950 to 2050. So here you can see the years 1950, 75, 2000, 2025, 2050, a gap of 25 years each. And towards the y-axis, you can actually see the percentage. And here, if you actually see this particular blue line, this actually represents the percentage of the population from 0 to 14 years. And similarly, we have, the markings or the jottings of 15 to 59 years, that is the working age population. Then 60 years above, that is the population, that is the elderly population, or the ratio which is actually taken for the dependency ratio. Here you can actually see that this will actually steadily increase post the year 2025 as per the observations. So moving forward, let us actually understand what is India's need to focus on comprehensive health insurance for India's aging population. Is that one reason is there is a higher burden or prevalence of chronic diseases among the elderly. If you actually see this particular numbers or the stats that is given in this image, you can see the cardiovascular disease, that is, it actually accounts for 35.6 prominent diseases among the India's aging population, followed by hypertension, diabetes, chronic lung disease, chronic bone or joint disease, and cancer, which actually stands at 0.7%. So since there is a higher burden of chronic diseases, there is need for comprehensive health insurance specifically for the aging population. Okay, so higher burden of chronic diseases, the elderly population, they actually live with a higher burden of chronic health conditions, which actually drives up the healthcare cost, that is the out-of-pocket expenditure, is inadequate health insurance coverage. So far there has been inadequacy or gaps in the health insurance coverage. So this actually necessitates a comprehensive health insurance for the aging population. So currently, if you see, only around 20% of India's population above the age group of 60 years is covered under the health insurance schemes as per India Aging Report of the year 2023. And also, the main reason for the lack of coverage are low awareness among the people, which actually, that is 53% are actually unaware, and also remaining 22% are due to the low affordability. And moving ahead, the next need for comprehensive health insurance is high out-of-pocket expenditure. Here, out-of-pocket health expenditure actually account for more than 70% of the healthcare expenditures in India, leading to health vulnerabilities in older population, and this is according to the observations of the longitudinal aging study in India. Okay. And moving forward, looking at the benefits or the beneficiaries who were covered under the Ayushman Bharat, this scheme provides for a coverage of up to rupees 5 lakh per family, and this actually particularly aims to alleviate the financial burden on the elderly by covering major treatments as well as procedures under the scheme, which are predominantly required by this particular age group of population. Also, now looking at various key challenges and issues that actually surround the senior healthcare in India or senior care in India. First one is the health inclusion. Okay, so there is a lack of comprehensive and integrated package of services, followed by there is a lot of infrastructural gap among them, and then there is a paucity of trained manpower, and also there is a need for an evidence-based geriatric care, and also limited financing of care for the elderly, and inadequacy in the emergency response infrastructure, followed by need for enabling frameworks and monitoring mechanisms, and insufficient focus on the hygiene related issues. So after focusing on the health inclusion, what are the other challenges? The next one is the social inclusion. So here in the Indian society, you actually see that there is a fragmented as well as a narrow social support system, and also there is limited awareness regarding their rights and provisions that are available. For example, we saw around 52% of the people are unaware about the insurance program and the coverage, so they are not enrolled there. Followed by that, there are a number of social factors like changing family structure as well as loss of social support, next social inequality, inadequate elderly friendly infrastructure, and contribution and challenges of care workers are neglected here. Moving forward, the next one is economic inclusion. So in Indian society, there is a need for universal as well as comprehensive financial system for the old age people. And also financial abuse and fraud are there. There is deficient support in lifetime financial planning as well as social security systems for them like the pension, etc. And also there is insufficient level of financial literacy. So the last one is digital inclusion. Okay, so here there is need to ensure digital literacy among the seniors. The next challenge is insufficient access to the digital goods, also paucity of digital training modules for the elderly, and also their understanding is actually less. And unaffordable digital equipment like smartphones or the PCs, etc., and limited broadband connections or Wi-Fi networks. So the internet access is actually very, very limited. Moving on, let us now understand few of the initiatives towards the senior care in India. So here, the first initiative is Pradhan Mantri Vaya Vandana Yojana, that is PMVVY. This actually provides assured pension return to the senior citizens through Life Insurance Corporation of India, that is LIC, offering an assured return of 8% per annum for 10 years. And also, there is a program of integrated program for older persons, that is the IPOP. This actually aims to improve the quality of life of the seniors by providing basic amenities like food, shelter, your medical care, as well as the entertainment opportunities. The next one is the Sacred Portal for the Elderly, where developed by Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, it offers job opportunities for the citizens who are aged above 60 years of age. Next one is the SAGE, which is nothing but Senior Care Aging Growth Engine Initiative. This offers access to elderly care products and services by credible startups supporting entrepreneurship in the field of elderly care. And the last one is Elder Line, which actually gives you a toll-free number which provides information, guidance, as well as emotional support, which is very, very important to the seniors, particularly on the pension, the medical and the legal issues, as well as their grievances that they can actually say, as well as the redressal that they are entitled to, alongside immediate assistance in case of abuses. The next article that we'll be discussing about is Preparing India for Water Stress, Climate Resilience. So this particular article discusses about India's need for a comprehensive water management strategy in order to tackle with that of climate change and also to ensure water security, emphasizing on policy integration as well as the financial investment in the process of adaptation. So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about the situation of water stress that is prevalent in India, and it is a very, very important and integral part of the topic of climate change. And we can map this particular topic to GS paper 3 under main, specifically under environmental pollution and degradation as well as food security. So moving forward, let us actually look at the previous year question. There have been questions in the mains examination in the year 2018 as well as 2015. So 2018 question was on the ideal solution of depleting groundwater resources in India is water harvesting system. And the next question, which was actually asked in the year 2015, was India is well endowed with freshwater resources, so critically examine why it still suffers from the scarcity of water. So moving ahead, here we actually understand here water conservation, groundwater resources as well as depletion, water stress, crisis or World Water Day, all these things are very, very important. So next, moving on, we'll actually understand what this particular article is actually discussing about. So here, the article discusses the pressing need for India in order to prepare for the water stress as well as to enhance the climate resilience, detailing the challenges as well as the potential strategies that actually have to be adopted. Okay, so moving forward, let us actually understand what are the various challenges that are faced by India. The first is water scarcity as well as the stress. Okay, so here if you look at this particular infographic, you can actually read that India actually houses 18% of the world's population, which is of course a huge number, but unfortunately, it actually has only 4% of the global freshwater resources. So here you can actually see the mismatch. Okay, despite housing or hosting 18% of the world's population, we have only 4% of global freshwater resources. Moving ahead, nearly half of India's rivers are polluted. That is, we know what is the extent to which the rivers or the water bodies in India are actually polluted. So moving forward, we have 150 of India's primary reservoirs are actually currently at just 38% of the total storage capacity. So this is also a very, very concerning figure. And the last point is India is the largest user of groundwater in the world. So the first challenge that is actually faced by India is the stress as well as the water scarcity. So moving ahead, the second one is the climate vulnerability. Okay, so it is important for us to understand that 75% of India's districts are hotspots for extreme climatic events, and also there has been reported repeated increasing frequencies as well as intensity of the hydrometeorological disasters, which is nothing but the floods, landslides, etc. This is also related to that of water. Next one is there is erratic or the changing rainfall patterns, with about 55% of the sub-districts seeing a significant increase, that is more than 10% in the southwest monsoon rainfall in the last decade. So moving forward, the next challenge that is actually faced is the interconnected challenges. That is, water is intrinsically connected to the vital sectors like one, that is agriculture, which is a significant contributor of GDP in the economy, as well as energy production. Then moving forward, we see lack of effective governance as well as policies recognizing the water, food, energy nexus. The next challenge that is actually faced is inadequate financing for climate adaptation. This is actually one of the major concerns that India faces. So the focus has been largely on climate change mitigation and not adaptation. This is very, very important. And if you see from the period of 2019 to 20, per capita annual spending on mitigation was around rupees 32,200, while for adaptation it was only rupees 260. So here the authors actually discuss the potential solutions. Okay, the first potential solution being effective water governance as well as policy integration, where they actually say that we need to develop policies that recognize the interconnectedness between the water, food as well as the energy systems. Next one is to incorporate localized evidence as well as community engagement in policy making. That is, all the essential stakeholders actually have to be involved and their consensus actually have to be taken. And moving forward is judicious water use as well as accounting. This is nothing but we need to implement robust water accounting principles in order to quantify the baseline water use and the potential savings in each sector. And also we need to promote efficient reuse of treated urban wastewater. Example, what is actually being done in the Amrut 2.0 mission. And also we need to increase the water use efficiency, that is target of around 20% by 2025, and reduce the non-revenue water losses. The next one, that is a potential solution, can be financing the climate adaptation as well as the water security, and this can be done by strengthening the wastewater management, incentivizing the climate resilient agricultural practices, as well as scaling up the desalination plants. Also, we need to leverage the market innovations like the Green Credit Program, and this particular program is nothing but it actually lays emphasis on the sustainability. It focuses on reducing the waste as well as improving the natural environment. And also focus on the corporate social responsibility investment, which has a potential of up to 12,000 rupee crore per year. The next article that we'll be discussing about is the mpox virus uses a mechanism called as genomic accordion in order to evolve as well as infect human beings. So, as this particular title actually reads, here we'll be discussing about what is this mechanism of genomic accordion, to which the pox viruses actually, use that to adapt to the changing environmental conditions. So, in this particular article, we'll be discussing about genomic accordions as well as pox viruses, and also this particular topic can be mapped to prelims, that is under general science, as well as current events of national and international importance. So moving forward, let us actually understand the previous year question that has been asked in the year 2023 in the prelims examination regarding a term called as aerial metagenomics. So from here, we can infer that particular terms which are actually related to specifically the science section becomes important for your preliminary examination. So moving forward, let us actually understand what this particular article is discussing about. Okay, so pox viruses, which are nothing but group of viruses which are known for causing diseases like smallpox as well as monkeypox, have an intriguing method or mechanism of adapting themselves and evolving rapidly through a mechanism referred to as the genomic accordions. Okay, so moving forward, let us actually understand what is this particular mechanism of genomic accordion as well as its significance and the associated concerns. So genomic accordions are nothing but these are unique evolutionary mechanisms that are observed in certain kinds of viruses. Here, to be very specific, the pox viruses, allowing rapid genomic adaptation through the expansion as well as the contraction of the segments of DNA. Okay, this is nothing but the deoxyribonucleic acid. So moving forward, this process actually enables the viruses in order to swiftly adjust their genetic material or the makeup in response to the environmental pressures, such as either it can be the immune responses that your body actually gives, or to any kind of the antiviral treatments that is actually given in order to fight the virus. So moving forward, now let us actually understand the mechanism of genomic accordion. As we discussed here, we'll actually talk about the expansion as well as the mutation and finally the contraction. Okay, so under expansion, if there is any kind of stress, that is the immune stress or the antiviral treatment that is actually given, that is immune pressure, the virus actually increases the copy number of specific genes, and this is actually achieved through different mechanisms like the process of duplication of genes, that is a gene duplication, where certain genes are replicated multiple times within that particular genome, and followed by this there is a process of mutation as well as selection. Now let us look into it. These extra gene copies, that is, which are arrived by the process of gene duplication, they actually accumulate mutations over time. And some mutations may confer advantages such as, in terms of resistance to the human responses or any kind of antiviral treatments or the medications. And these beneficial mutations can be selected for the survival, enhancing the ability of the virus in order to cope up with the stress and to survive. And moving forward is the contraction. What is this process of contraction? Is that once this particular environmental stress is actually removed, that is, the environmental stressor after removal, or in case if it is actually reduced, maintaining numerous gene copies actually becomes metabolically too very expensive or difficult for the virus. And then the virus actually eliminates the excess copies, returning to a more streamlined genome that is energetic or energetically more sustainable, or which can actually sustain for a longer hours. Okay. Next, moving on, understanding the significance of genomic accordion. The first one is rapid adaptation that we already saw, which is nothing but this particular mechanism allows viruses in order to adapt very quickly to the changing environmental conditions outside, and this actually facilitates the evolution of new strains of viruses, that is new viral strains that can evade the therapeutic intervention as well as immune detection. And also one of the other significances apart from the rapid adaptation is that evolutionary advantage that is actually given to this pox virus, which is nothing but genomic accordions provide a significant evolutionary advantage, giving viruses the flexibility in order to test multiple genetic changes in parallel, that is simultaneously. And this accelerates the natural selection process, thereby enabling the faster development of advantageous traits of this particular virus. The next article that we'll be discussing about is the story of Indelible Ink, a lasting symbol of election. So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about the usage or the application of indelible ink in India's electoral process. Along with that, we'll be discussing about the history of this indelible ink as well as the provisions under the Representation of People Act, which is actually surrounding the same, and its applications in different parts of the globe. And this particular article discusses about indelible ink, and we'll also be dealing with its associated provisions under the Representation of People Act of 1951. And also this actually forms a significant part of indigenization of technology. And also with respect to that of the examination, we can map this particular topic to GS paper 2 for the mains examination under salient features of Representation of People's Act. So moving forward, there has been a previous year question asked in the year 2021 in the prelims examination with respect to the process of election. So from here, the takeaway is that the entire topic of election, the electoral reforms, as well as the different processes that are actually taking place in the provisions associated become very, very important for both your prelims as well as your mains examination. Moving forward, now let us actually understand what this particular article is discussing about. Okay. So after the first phase of the Lok Sabha elections that have been completed, the classic symbol of the Indian polls, that is the indelible ink, has been actually under the limelight or has been under the focus again. So here it has been observed that around 26.5 lakh files or the small bottles, each of a capacity of 10 ml, will be actually made for this particular election cycle. So moving ahead, let us actually understand what this particular indelible ink is all about. Okay. So indelible ink, which is usually marked on the index finger of your left hand during the electoral process, is used to mark the voters during the process of elections in order to prevent a particular person voting multiple times, that is to prevent multiple voting. And the concentration of this is silver nitrate, which is actually constituting about 20% of the same. And this makes the ink actually visible under the ultraviolet light, and it actually becomes very difficult to wash for a period of about 72 hours. Okay. So the ink also includes a water-based solvent like alcohol in order to dry up very quickly. And as I told you, at around concentration of about 20% of silver nitrate, this ink becomes very difficult to remove for at least 72 hours after its application on the day of election. Next one, let us actually say, or let us look into who are the manufacturers of this particular indelible ink. So Mysore Paints and Varnish Limited, which is actually owned by the Karnataka government, actually happens to be the sole manufacturer of this indelible ink in India since 1962. And the company was established in the year 1937 by Nalwadi Krishnaraja Wodeyar, who happens to be the Maharaja of Mysore. And this actually supplies indelible ink not only to India, but also is involved in the process of exports to more than around 25 countries. And it is also important to note that later the National Research Development Corporation had actually patented this particular indelible ink. Now, let us actually understand whether this particular indelible ink actually find its mention in any of the provisions, okay? So, mention of the ink in the RPA Act, that is the Representation of People Act. So, according to the RPA of 1951, this actually includes the provisions for the use of indelible ink in the process of elections. And also, to be very particular, Section 61 of this RPA Act of 1951, it actually states that the rules may be formulated for marking the voters with this particular indelible ink on the thumb or any other finger before they are given a ballot paper. And also, this practice ensures that each voter can cast their vote only once, as the ink actually remains on the finger for days, particularly for 72 hours of time indicated that they have already voted. Let us solve few prelims as well as the mains practice questions. The first question reads, genomic accordion, sometimes mentioned in the news, refers to which one of the following phenomena? It refers to the rapid adaptation mechanism in viruses through the expansion and contraction of the DNA segments. So here, going by the options, the answer will be option B. Moving forward, the second question reads, consider the following statements about the indelible ink used in the Indian elections. The first statement is the RPA of 1951 specifically mentions the use of the indelible ink for elections. Yes, this is correct. The second one is Mysore Paints and Varnish Limited is the sole manufacturer of the indelible ink in India. This is also correct. So, since both these statements are actually correct, the answer will be option C. So, here C will be your answer. So, the third one is consider the following pairs, the type of coral reefs as well as the example. Fringing reef, yes, coral reefs in Andaman as well as the Nicobar Islands, yes. Barrier reefs, this is actually the Belize reef, this is also correct. And finally, atoll reef, this is also rightly matched with reefs in Maldives. Since all are actually rightly matched, the answer will be all the three, that is option C. Moving forward, the fourth question actually reads, coral reef breakthrough, sometimes seen in news, is an initiative by the International Coral Reef Initiative. So, the answer will be option B. The fifth question, the last prelims question actually reads, consider the following statement. Statement 1, India is a water-stressed country. Yes, this is correct. Statement 2 reads, India houses 18% of the world's population but has only 4% of the global freshwater resource. This is also correct. So, which one of the following is correct in respect of the above statements? The correct one will be both statements 1 and 2 are actually correct. And statement 2 is not the correct explanation for statement 1. So, going by this particular statement, the answer will be option B, since B is actually correct. So, moving forward, now let us actually solve a mains practice question which reads, discuss the need for comprehensive health insurance for India's aging population, the challenges surrounding the senior care, and also suggest the measures in order to enhance the welfare of the elderly citizens in India. So, the approach to this particular question is broken into the introduction, body as well as the conclusion. So, here in the introduction, we will actually introduce by highlighting the demographic trend that shows an increasing proportion of the elderly population in India. And towards the body, let us actually explain how the prevalence of chronic diseases among the elderly has been increasing and how it is increasing the healthcare costs. Moving forward, we'll actually discuss the economic challenges, that is high out-of-pocket expenditure for the healthcare, and also we will detail the current inadequacies in the health insurance coverage for the elderly and also suggest the measures such as expansion of Ayushman Bharat as well as other initiatives by the government, and propose the development of integrated healthcare systems and advocate for policy reforms. And towards the conclusion, we will conclude by reaffirming the importance of a multifaceted approach to senior healthcare in India, which includes but is not limited to comprehensive health insurance. So with this, we've actually come to the end of the daily news analysis. For further and regular updates, please do like, share and subscribe to Narayana IAS Academy YouTube channel. Thank you.